who made their indelible mark in the profession. They include Mr. S. Sundaram, Dr. AK Ghoshroy, Captain Mohan Ram, Professor SD Sharma, Mr. ML Kocher, Mr. Surinder Singh. We also take this opportunity, Amir, the host, can you please show the screen, the first slide?
SD Sharma, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, we have on the slide Professor Sharma, Mr. Sundaram, Dr. Ghosh Roy, Captain Mohan Ram, Mr. Kochhar, and Mr. Surinder Singh. We could not get Mr. Ilar Nath, Commodore M.K. Mukherjee, Mr. Bhatia, and many others who are their contemporaries. And of course, some others like Professor Rameshwar Bhattacharya, Admiral Gupta, and Mr. Rawat, who made their mark in US and abroad, also Mr. Nimai Basu. I also take this opportunity, we shall be having a small remembrance of Mr. Ajit Chopra, who left us for his heavenly abode earlier this year. He was a good friend of the panelists here and a contemporary. We are fortunate to have Mrs. Chopra and their son, Mr. Arjun Chopra, also among us. Mr. Chopra was born in Lahore of pre-partition India on 18th February 1936. Post-partition, his family moved to Ludhiana, where he did his schooling. He received his Bachelor of Technology degree in Naval Architecture in 1958 from IIT Kharagpur with first-class honors. He then worked with Hindustan Shipyard Limited, Mazagon Docks, before joining Lloyd's Register in 1966. He was among the top executives to leave Lloyd's Register and joined the newly initiated Indian Register of Shipping in 1975. He contributed immensely to the establishment of Indian Classification Society, guiding the team with his knowledge, forbearance, optimism, correctness, and precision, all hallmarks of a true professional. He retired as the Chief Surveyor of IRS in 1997. I have been fortunate to work under him for over 15 years and learned a lot about professional integrity from him. May I request the panel members, starting with Professor Sharma and Captain Mohan Ram, to speak very briefly about him, please. You can take your turn.
Hello, good morning, everybody. So nice to see you all after such a long time. I'm not yet fully awake, so I would rather listen than talk.
Sure, understand. Would Captain Mohan Ram say a few words about Mr. Chopra, please?
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to join you. Ajit Chopra was not just a friend, he was almost a brother for me. We joined the same batch. We crossed the Hooghly River from Company Bagan to Pare Bagan in those leaky rowing boats. I attended his wedding in 1971. His children, son was my son's junior in school. Manisha is a dear friend of ours, and me and my wife. We had dinner together earlier this year. And I met Ajit on 24th of February when he had a get-together in Bombay. It was a real shock to me when he passed away suddenly after 2-3 months. What can I say about Ajit? He was a wonderful human being, a thoroughgoing professional, and a gentleman to the core. He'll be missed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Kochhar, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. We were colleagues at Mazagon Dock, and he joined Mazagon Dock in 1960. He came from Hindustan Shipyard, was senior to me, and we both joined as technical assistant. And in 1966, I went to UK and joined the frigate project organization when Ajit joined Lloyd's. And then when I came back in 1969, I joined ABS. We have had a very dear relationship, and more so because he married a family from a Kochhar, married a girl from a Kochhar family, and I had married a girl from a Chopra family. And I received them at the airport when he came back after marriage and had a big reception for him at my house. And I think our association, close to 60 years, has been so wonderful. And as Captain Mohan Ram said, we met just a few months before he passed away at Mr. Sundaram's house for lunch. He's one of the finest gentlemen I ever met. And incidentally, he was the first man who ragged me in Kharagpur. As soon as I got down from the rickshaw, and he came to know that I'm joining Naval Architecture department. And he was staying in Apiyal. They called him and asked me, okay, another Bakra, come and drag him. So I miss him very much.
Dr. Ghosh Roy, do you remember Mr. Ajit Chopra?
Yes, I remember him very much. As you know, I spent 12 years in Bombay, and I was a surveyor first in MMD, and then I was deputy chief surveyor in the DG Shipping. And as surveyor in MMD and in DG Shipping, we met quite often. And as it happened, when I was in DG Shipping, I was also the member of the first IRS committee when I was in formations. And we met and exchanged quite frequently. And as my colleagues were saying, he was a finest gentleman, always helpful, always smiling. And whenever I, later on when I shifted to Kolkata and I visited Bombay, I met him in his office. He was cordially received me every time and assisted me in my problems all the time. We all regret the passing away of our valuable friend, and I wish his soul all godly wishes.
Thank you very much, sir. I wonder if Mr. Sundaram has joined. Since he has not joined, may I request Mr. Surinder Singh, if you remember Mr. Chopra, sir.
I do remember Mr. Chopra. He was my first boss in Mazagon Dock in the basic design office before he got a job with Lloyd Professor Raghuram was the one who introduced us. And later on, when I left SCI and I'd gone abroad, when I used to come back, he was always very friendly. He even actually offered me hospitality of his house till I could find an apartment. So I have some memories, but not very many, because I didn't stay in India for very long. So it was sad to hear that he's passed away. So all condolences to the family.
Thank you very much. So with that, we conclude the remembrance of Mr. Chopra. We would be happy to know uh, if Mrs. Chopra has been able to hear all these lovely words made by the senior naval architects, his friends and contemporaries. With this, let me begin a short introduction of all the panel members, one after the other. I begin with Professor SD Sharma. Professor SD Sharma has been a most distinguished professor of naval architecture. He was born in India in 1937 and educated at Rajputana University in Jaipur and at the IIT Kharagpur. He passed out as a class topper in 1957. Soon after graduation, he went to Germany to work with the Flender shipyard in Lübeck. He worked there between 1957 to 1960. In 1959, he met Professor Windblom at Hamburg, and with his guidance and encouragement, he earned his PhD from Technical University of Hanover in 1965 and settled down in Germany. He was long employed as a research engineer at the Hamburg Ship Model Basin between 72 to 81 before joining the university faculty in 1982. His research highlights have been application of wave and wake analysis, study of maritime collision avoidance, design of computerized planar motion carriage for ship model experiments, development of algorithm for simulating ship maneuvers, etc. He has served as visiting research associate and professor at University of Michigan and at MIT. I personally was lucky to attend a lecture from Dr. Sharma at Kharagpur IIT. The topic, as I remember, was a kind of interference of reflected waves from ships traveling in a canal, which interference resulted in reduction in the wave resistance. It was a very, very interesting lecture. And I was fortunate to hear that because I had gone there to recruit engineers on behalf of my employer. Thank you, Professor Sharma, for attending this panel. Captain Mohan Ram. Captain Mohan Ram was born in April 1936 at Coimbatore. His life has been like transiting from one golden mountain peak to another. He graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 1958 with BTech Naval Architecture, the course topper and unopposed Vice President of Students Gymkhana. Post his graduation and a very brief stint as an academician at IIT, he joined Indian Navy and was sent to Royal Naval College, Greenwich for an advanced course in warship design, where he again topped the class. During his tenure, he was instrumental in designing the Godavari class frigate and received Vishisht Seva Medal in 1977. Captain Mohan Ram retired from Navy in 1989 and joined Mazagon Docks as head of design office. He also got his gold medal in management from Delhi University in 1977. He joined Mukund Limited as vice president in 1984, headed construction foundry and steel plant, and left Mukund in 1989 to join TVS Motor Company as president, thereafter director, and finally as advisor. He has done an advanced course in product management and management strategy from Stanford University. He received Distinguished Alumnus Award from IIT Kharagpur in 2012. He did a PDMS advanced course in product development from Stanford University. He has written a few books, including My Ships Sailed the Seas, But I Stayed Alone, Recycling of End-of-Life Vehicles, Focus on India and Developing Nations. Captain Mohan Ram was my first kind and revered boss at Mazagon Docks. And that was a time when I was courting myself. and he was bothered by my would-be wife a few times to share his external telephone. Although he was very kind to us both, he would not hesitate to let others know there was a fairer sex on the other side. I go to the next panelist, Mr. Surinder Singh. Mr. Surinder Singh is a pioneer of Indian naval architects to oversee shipbuilding in major shipyards in the Far East and has possibly worked to maximum number of shipyards we can think of. He was born in July 1941 and is from Dehradun. He graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 64, topping his class again. We have all toppers here. After graduation, he joined Mazagon Docks and worked in the design office until 1969. Mr. Singh joined Shipping Corporation in the Technical Services Division and looked after a whole spectrum of services from specification and contract negotiation to plan approval to on-site supervision of oboes, tankers, passenger vessels, etc., being built in Sweden, East Germany, Poland, USSR, South Korea, and Japan. In 1982, he joined Wakefield Marine in Japan to carry out site supervision, marine surveys, scrapping, and reactivation of ships. Subsequently, Mr. Singh worked on various executive capacities with Orient Ship Management, later term named as Cargill International Ocean Transportation, Volume GmbH, Eurasia Shipping, Qatar Shipping, Bernard Schultz Ship Management, and lastly, Fortescue Metals Group Australia in top executive positions. Retired in 2018 and lives in Pune in his own farm. My first year in Mazagon Dock, I was lucky to take a voyage with Mr. Surinder Singh on MV Harshavardhan from Kolkata to Port Blair, along with my senior, Mr. Karkhanis. There was so much to learn from him, and let me say that he led me to trace this sewage line backwards from the STP to the second class passenger deck, wearing boiler suit with me. Thank you, sir. Let me next come to Mr. AK Ghoshroy. Dr. Ghoshroy has been a naval architect who built ships with passion, showed his concern on environment, and trained and taught naval architects throughout his life. On completion of graduation from IIT Kharagpur in 1957, he charted his path through hardcore ship production at Rajavagan Dockyard in Calcutta, with a period of shipbuilding training at Deutsche Werft Hamburg with a scholarship. Post acquiring expertise in ship production and material science, Dr. Ghoshroy joined Digi Shipping, rising to become Deputy Chief Ship Surveyor. During this phase, he acquired his PhD in Structural Engineering at Bombay University, with noteworthy publications in the arena transactions. He returned to Garden Ridge Works, as GRAC was known then, to rise to become the head of shipbuilding and ship repair in a short span of time. His next choice was to become a professor at IIT Madras, where he taught ship design, shipyard design, and ship production technology. Dr. Ghoshroy returned to Kolkata in later professional years, when he looked after the design and manufacturing of deck machineries and thereafter steel plant utilities, followed by environmental engineering. He has written a number of books on sustainable development, sea ships, and seafaring over ages, global sustainability of water resources, renewable energy, global warming and climate change, innovations, etc., over the last 12 years. A fiercely passionate engineer, he has covered a wide spectrum of applications to make this world a better place. Dr. Ghoshroy saved me from an embarrassing situation during my second year training at GRAC, when he took away Mr. AK Jain, the design manager, on some urgent work, when Mr. Jain was grilling me on my learning at the brazing shop at one of my seniors' long table design office. Let me come to Mr. M.L. Kochhar. Mr. Kocher has been a patron and a father figure of naval architects over decades. A mathematics graduate from Punjab University who took up naval architecture as his lifetime profession, graduated from IIT Kharagpur in 1960. Like most of the early naval architects, he waded through adversities and challenges during his early years at Great Eastern Shipping, Mazagon Docks, and Indian Frigate project to join ABS in 1969 and remained with ABS over 32 years. He became ABS head of Indian subcontinent. He established ABS as a go-to class society for shipyards and shipowners alike and was among the first senior naval architects to value offshore oil and gas industry. Always available to lend an ear to the young naval architects, Mr. Kocher for a long time helped young naval architects to find better opportunities in India and abroad. On retirement from ABS, he joined Dolphin Offshore as president and led them over 5 years, followed by a stint with iMaritime Consulting, and is currently professionally very active as an independent consultant helping shipping and offshore projects. Recipient of Lifetime Achievement Award in Marine Offshore Oil and Gas, awarded by International Maritime Club in 2018. Mr. Kocher has been going to office regularly 5 days a week, following it up by building his golf club over the weekends. 2020 has not been able to deter him. I first met Mr. Kocher during my 4th year training at ABS office at Bombay Marine when I visited ABS office with my then boss, Mr. AK Suda. Thank you very much, Mr. Kocher. I come to the end with Mr. Sundaram. Mr. Sundaram is also to the first batch of naval architects and started his career with Andrew Yule after his graduation in 1957. Thereafter, he joined East India Shipping Corporation and then Shipping Corporation of India. He had an illustrious career with SCI, rising to become the Director Technical. Coming from an illustrious family from Mysore, Mr. Sundaram has been an epitome of intelligence, forbearance, wit, and graciousness. He has been the guru to many naval architects. I'm fortunate to have been his neighbor in Mumbai over 10 years and receives his blessings always. With that, I end the introduction part of this. Since Mr. Sundaram is not joined yet, I think, I'm afraid. May I request Mr. Kochhar to say a few words about your talk, to talk about your journey over the last 63 years.
I think you said most of it. Okay. When I joined IIT in 1955, the first thing I was told that there are no jobs for naval architects. And I think Captain Mohan Ram used to tell us, you probably go and open a Manbidi shop after your graduation. It was very depressing. The first 5 years, it was challenging, very interesting, but same time very depressing as to coming out for this premier institute and there's no job. And that was really the situation. I was lucky that the only one from my batch got a job in Great Eastern. And that also because I happened to be a joint convener of Shipping and Shipbuilding Conference at IIT Kharagpur. My other classmates, either they went abroad, a couple of them, or they were sitting at home. And at that particular time, all shipyards had decided that they will take this naval architects from IIT on 3 years training. First year, 100 rupees a month. Second year, 200 rupees a month. And third year, 300 rupees a month. And then they'll be employed as junior draftsmen. You can imagine how depressing it was for all of us. Finally, Mazagondoc approached me and asked me to come as a junior draftsman because they needed somebody to do the damage stability calculations. And for a passenger ship, they had an order from Shipping Corporation by name Yareva. This is how I started my career in Mazagon. First 6 months, junior draftsman, B grade, then 6 months promoted to A grade. After that, they advertised for the position of a technical assistant, and that was by selection. And that's where I was promoted, and Mr. Ajit Chopra came from Hindustan Shipyard. So two of us were running the entire design office. Once I think the management realized, the industry realized our value, then our career took a different path. So 9 years at Mazagon Dock gave me a very good foundation on shipbuilding. And after 9 years, 3 years I spent in the UK on the warship construction. So when I returned to Mazagon Dock, then I realized that I think Captain Mohan Ram is sitting there. You won't mind me telling him because it was all the naval officers had come. And when the naval officers are there, I think the civilians get a backseat. So I thought it's time for me to look for another option. So this is where I got a job with ABS as the first naval architect. I would say the first, the second. First, Mr. Chopra joined Logistics of Shipping, and I was the second IIT graduate to join ABS, with whom I worked, as mentioned, for 32 years. Within 8 years, I became the country head. And there were 5 engineers ahead of me, and they were all fighting with each other to take that position. And I was at the back seat, but so luckily, I got the position. And I think I took ABS to a different dimension. And I've done my best to promote this profession. I've done my best. All the professionals, I think anybody who came to me never went empty-handed. And when I retired from ABS, I think I retired at the age of 68, 65 is a normal retirement age. Then they put me in ABS consulting for another 3 years. Then I joined Dolphin Offshore as president. I'm still going. So that's my career path. Very depressing to start with, but ultimately I'm very satisfied with what I have achieved. And I'm glad that I came from this institute. I joined this course. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Any questions anyone has? I can't hear you.
Yeah, Mr. J.D. Gupta, your microphone is muted right now.
Yeah.
May I request Mr. Surinder Singh, in case you have any, you have known Mr. Kochhar. So if you have any questions,
Yes.
you can.
Questions, no. Only a sense of appreciation and gratitude for guiding us all. He even at a certain stage encouraged me to find an alternative to the SCI job because there were too many naval architects in SCI already. So he helped me in that. Finally, it didn't work out, but I've always admired him. He has helped a lot of naval architects find positions. And that is one of the rare qualities that he is helping the people from his own institute to find suitable jobs wherever he could help them, he has helped them. Thank you very much, Mr. Kocher.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have had a lot of interactions with Madan Kocher. I found him a thoroughgoing professional. We worked together when I was heading the design department Mazagon Docks. We did the offshores patrol vessels for the Coast Guard. And he went out of the way to help the shipyard when we are doing a first-time design for the Indian Coast Guard major ship. And that led the way to ABS doing a lot more work for the Navy. I really enjoyed working with Madan, and his wife became a good friend. I even met his sister-in-law when they were in Newcastle. She's a doctor, I think. I know the family. Madan's son was my son's junior in school, and I think we go back a long way together. I'm very glad to see him today. Good luck, Madan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
So may I request Captain Mohan Ram to say a few words, share your life story with us.
Well, good morning. I feel I'm a bit of an imposter because I spent 26 years in naval architecture and 36 years outside. I've spent 31 years in the automobile industry. So to call myself a naval architect may be a bit of an exaggeration. When I joined IIT, I didn't know even what naval architecture was. I didn't know the spelling. I thought it was spelled with NAVEL, belly button. And I spent a lot of time in extracurricular activities. In my final year, I was a strong candidate for the President's Gold Medal, but I went for the Gymkhana, much to the disappointment of Prof. Mitra, who wanted me to bring a honor, which Sharma did earlier. And no regrets, because it gave me good practical experience. I taught in IIT for 1 year. I left it for the sake of my sanity and the students' welfare. I was a horrible teacher. And I have no regrets about that. And things happen very slowly in the academic world. It's like watching paint dry. For an impatient character like me, it's just no fit. So from the sublime to the ridiculous, I joined the Navy. I tried for Hindustan Lever for a covenanted job. Fate decided I was not supposed to sell soap, that I should design frigates. Unilever did not select me. I joined the Navy. I had a wonderful time in the Navy. I was sent for training in Bath, where I worked with the Royal Navy. That was the most exciting moment of my life was when I held in my hand a workbook written in his own free hand by R.E. Froude. He was a constructor in the Royal Navy. There's a workbook in beautiful calligraphic writing for R.E. Froude. And I thought I was holding history in my hand. I was really excited. I came back and I worked on the design of an ocean-going tug, which was constructed by Garden Reach Workshop. And I think Dr. Ghosh Roy was there at that time. Then I worked on seaward defense boats, designed a large landing ship tank, Magar class, which was built, did work on INS Nilgiri, modified, put a collapsible hangar for a helicopter, and redid the air conditioning. The biggest challenge was design of INS Godavari. We had no data. We had only 3 officers, 10 non-matriculate draftsmen. It was like a Sherpa climbing without oxygen. And we did not have an agreement with the Russians. I did the general arrangement by photographing Jane's fighting ships and measuring distances and located guns, radars, missiles, etc. from this very, very crude system, but it worked. I was delighted and I took another big risk. We are looking for propulsion for Godavari, which is a bigger ship. The Navy wanted 1 more knot speed. I worked out that the same steam propulsion which worked in the smaller ship will work in Godavari because of the aerodynamic factors of a crest at the stern and favorable interference of bow and stern wave patterns. So I convinced the Navy that they did not change the steam and they can use the same machinery. Saved thousands of crores for the Navy. The ship was built. I was on the bridge when the sea trials were done. And the ship went a knot faster. That was probably the proudest moment of my life. Then I joined Mazgon Docks, where we worked on a number of designs, inter-island ferry for Andaman, a diving support vessel, offshore support vessels, the most important thing, offshore patrol vessels for the Coast Guard. I presented a paper on this at Royal Institute of Naval Architects. I met a Japanese naval architect who told me, "Do you know Dr. Sharma?" I said, "Yes." He said, "He is the finest naval architect in the world." I felt so proud when he said that to me. He was from Mitsubishi Research Tank. I had a middle-aged menopause complex. 1984, I turned my back on naval architecture and went to general management. After that, I had nothing to do with ships. I had picked up an MBA while I was in Delhi. That didn't get me the job. I got a job in Mukund because Mr. Sundaram was the chief executive who was earlier managing director of Mazagon Docks. In Mukund, I worked on construction, ran a foundry, and ran an alloy steel plant. I debottlenecked the steel plant, and I turned around 2 SIG divisions. 1989, I joined TVS Motor as president. The company was in serious difficulties, but by combination of good management and good luck, we turned the company around, and it became one of the national awards for productivity and customer returns. And one other proud moment was I developed the INS, the TVS Scooty, the small scooter, from a 3,600 ton frigate to 75 kg Scooty. Was a very long journey. The Scooty sold over 10 million vehicles, and it created a whole new category in India. Then I put up a plant in Mysore where I work closely with Sundaram. That plant produces 1 million vehicles a year now and is one of the finest plants in the country. After that, I went as a consultant of Mazagon Dock, full-time consultant TVS. I turned my focus to recycling of motorcycles at the end of life and wrote a book on the subject. I retired on 31st of May this year after 62 years of non-stop work. My secret is take your work seriously, never take yourself seriously. Thank you. I have nothing more to say.
Would any of the panel members, especially Professor Sharma, would you like to ask any questions to Captain Mohan Ram regarding his time at college, if you remember that, or thereafter?
Oh, yes, I remember him very well. He was just 1 year junior to me, and so I remember the whole batch quite well. Well, Mohan Ram, do you remember the name of that guy from Mitsubishi? Perhaps I should send him a card.
I think he's a person who worked on breaking wave theory.
Perhaps perhaps a guy called Baba.
Yes, correct. Short man.
Yeah.
This guy, and I thought he was an ordinary fellow. When he did the breaking wave theory, I felt like doing namaskar for him because he has done more work in his life. I can do in double lifetime. And he told me, Sharma is something else.
It's always fun to establish connections. We had met quite a few times at international conferences and in foreign at the University of Michigan and so on. So very old recollections. Well, you had a diverse and distinguished career. What are you doing nowadays?
Yeah, that is interesting. You see, when I retired, my wife got double the husband and half the salary. And I've written books. The first book I wrote was this. Can you see me? This is a book on years in the Navy. I sailed the ships and my ship sailed the seas, but I stayed ashore. Then 2 years ago, I wrote a book on recycling because I have represented India in international conferences and I'm considered, quote unquote, a bit of an authority on automotive recycling. Now I'm writing a third book about my childhood. And other than that, I'm writing inane posts in Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., generally making a nuisance of myself. But I can tell you that after 62 years non-stop work, retirement is good. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. Thank you.
Well, that's extremely interesting. You are so productive. You're writing books while I'm only reading them for the last 18 years. And very, Very nice to see you again. Very nice to see you again. If only it's...
Sharma, can I mention one thing about you? The Naval Architects Marine Engineering Society was started in IIT Kharagpur in 1956. I presented the first paper, a very workmanlike affair on prefabrication of units in Hindustan shipyard. Sharma presented the second paper. It was called The Soaring Flight of Eagles. It was amazing. He did explain with the help of hydrodynamic equations how eagles fly using thermals. And he wrote actual equations of body weight of the wing spread, body weight, etc., of an eagle, how it flows. It was something out of this world. He just wondered. Another thing, in his final year hydrodynamics paper, the 5 questions to be answered out of 8. Sharma, being the idiot he was, answered 1 question for 3 hours. He wrote a dissertation. By all rates, he should have been failed. Raghuram gave him full marks and told Sharma, I should have failed you, but you wrote such a wonderful dissertation, I didn't have the heart to do it, plus don't do it again. That is Sharma. I think we have had any number of naval architects in this country. I don't mind saying this, Sharma is something else. If Sharma is A+, I rate myself B- or C+. That is a gulf between us. I really mean that in my heart.
Come on. It's too much of a mutual complementation society. But my God, what memory you have. That was 64 years ago, and you still remember details. Great, great. I think before we overdo it, let's move on to the next item.
Any other panelists want to put up a question?
I would only add that I was always jealous of Captain Mohan Ram. How could someone be so intelligent? That's all I'll say. I found him extremely intelligent, very sharp, and unbelievable. Hats off to him.
Dr. Ghosh Roy, would you like to ask a question to Captain Mohan Ram?
Well, Captain Mohan Ram is always very agile and energetic. Always a wide vision of life. And he has a view over a lot of things. And he did study the things before delivering his valued commentary. Well, we met off and on, not very often. He went to the Navy, and I was first in Kolkata, then in Bombay, back to Kolkata. So we didn't meet so often, but we did meet. We had a lunch together in Bangalore, hosted by Sundaram. That is, I met him the last. Before that, in a seminar in Bombay, INA seminar, where I did a paper on productivity and branding of ships. And Mohan Ram was a man who could give very knowledgeable commentary on branding. And I believe he was the only man who really understood branding. Thank you, Mohan Ram, for supporting me today as concerned. Thank you.
So before we go ahead, I wish to get back to Mr. Kochhar. There are a couple of questions to Mr. Kochhar. One asked by Mr. Chug, Mr. Naresh Chug. So he asked a very interesting question. He's asked, what is the best age to retire? I'm 68 and still supervising new shipbuilding in a shipyard in Shanghai. I still enter tanks and attend sea trials. The question is now in my mind whether I should retire or continue. This is to Mr. Kochhar, sir.
Why should you retire? There's no age for retirement. Just continue as long as you can do. That's it. I'm 85. I'm still working. I come to office 5 days a week, 5, 6 days a week. I play golf 3 days a week. And I think that's the only thing that keeps you fit. If you retire, as somebody said, that's you're just waiting for your end, right? And I don't want to do that. And don't do that. That's my advice to everyone. Don't retire. Just continue as long as you're healthy, you're fit, and you can do it.
Hey, lawyers never retire. Buffaloes never retire. Have you ever heard of a retired buffalo? I think naval architects are like buffaloes.
So, I have one question. Personally, I have one question to Captain Mohan Ram. Sir, the question is, you have seen both sides of the shipbuilding and the automobile industry to some extent. Now, as people often say that shipbuilding to heavy engineering is what automobile industry to light engineering. So I want your comment on that. This is question number one.
What is your question exactly?
So how do you relate automobile industry to shipbuilding industry?
I tell you, it's all by accident. Kochhar knows I had some difference of opinion with the managing director of Mazagon Docks. I wanted a job change. I went to Mukund to construction, which is allied to naval architecture. Then I was watching the foundry, working there. I went to the furnace and all, learned a bit of foundry technology. I became the head of the foundry. Then I went to the flagship steel, which is a big steel plant. That's also heavy industry. I did a bottlenecking, which doubled the production in Mukund. I learned from my subordinates, but I worked like blazes. There are days when I did not come home. I used to stay in the guest house in Kalwa and go around the steel plant at midnight and whatnot. It's all by hard work. Then in 1989, I got this offer from TVS. It's a total change. Because light engineering, I had nothing about machining, did not know what a capstan lathe was, what a turret lathe, what a motorcycle was. But I knew how to manage people because I had handled strikes in Mukund. So the first thing I did in TVS was manage a big strike and a lockout. I learned from my subordinates. But one thing is that design is fungible. If you can design one thing, you can design another thing. But the fundamental principles of design, the creative thinking are the same. I had a very major part to play in the design of the Scooty. The Scooty had nothing to do with a frigate. The customers of the Scooty were girls mostly. And we did not know what they wanted. No amount of market research tells you what the customer wants. And we had to play unreliable market. And we are talking of grams by weight. The total weight of the Scooty was 75 kilos. 1 kilo weight was cost. But look in a different way. But you do it. There's no solution to do things unless you try them. And I have believed in one thing. A naval architect can do anything. A ship is a microcosm of the world. It is a propulsion unit. It's a living place. It's a recreation place. It's a fighting unit also for the Navy. It's got air conditioning. It's got plumbing. It's got everything. If you can design a ship, you can design any goddamn thing in the world. That's my belief.
Very true. Okay, may I now request Professor Sharma, SD Sharma, to share your life story with us. Hope you have woken up now.
Well, Jyotishman, you seem to have done an enormous amount of research on all of us, and you already narrated my life story better than I could. So what can I add? Perhaps some general message.
Yes.
One of the lessons I have learned is that you cannot plan your future in detail. There's a saying that's easier to plan the future than to predict it. But I think this has to be modified. You can plan it only in a general way. You can't plan details. Take my example. take my case, for example. Back in 1957, soon after graduation, I came to Germany. The idea was to get some practical experience in a shipyard, which was one of the best in the world at that time. Germany was #1 in world shipbuilding. So I was supposed to stay and work here for 1 year. Meanwhile, just over 63 years have passed. Nobody could have predicted this. Life is full of surprises. All I can say is you should stay ready and seize the opportunity when it comes. I have no regrets. I chose to study naval architecture because it was so different from all the other fields that were available at that time. I joined IIT Kharagpur at the age of 15. I had never boarded a ship before that. I had no real conception of what a ship is, what naval architecture is. I came to Kharagpur anyway, undecided whether to take the offer, just to meet Professor Felker and be introduced to the field. I was so impressed. I think none of my teachers played such a formative role in my life as Professor Felker. It's a pity that he didn't stay until we finished. He left India in 1955 to join the Technical University of Vienna. But his profound influence persisted in my life. It persists to this day. It would be nice to hear your reminiscences of Professor Felker, even if it were only 2 years or 1 year. And then I had the great fortune of meeting Professor George Weinblum in Germany. Again, he had a great formative influence on my life. Not only regarding this subject and the profession, but general advice in life. He was truly a mentor, the old-fashioned mentor, who not only teaches you your science and field, but can give you practical, useful advice. So that's how things have been moving, full of surprises, full of turns, full of changes, like in the lives of most of you. Well, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Sharma, you said you can only plan, you can't predict the future. That reminds me of a wonderful sentence written by C.K. Prahlad, the management guru. Life is a marathon, run 100 yards at a time. You may have your plan where you want to end up at a marathon, but you have to time each 100 yards and make course corrections. It's very interesting that you started as a shipbuilder. I thought you wanted to be a researcher all the time. When did the change occur?
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. I have had 3 phases in my life. I worked in the industry. I worked in research institutions, model basins, and finally ended up as a teacher. Perhaps it is in my genes. My grandfather was a teacher. My father was a teacher. So I also ended up as a teacher. It's a wonderful profession, you know, to be dealing with young people, passing on whatever knowledge you have, also learning from them. I wonder whether there's a profession more satisfying than that of a teacher or a professor. But I guess every profession has its own charm. So I have been lucky.
It's interesting that unlike you, I hate teaching. 1 year taught me a lesson that teaching is not for me. My entire naval career, I dodged all teaching assignments because I think teaching requires patience. And I'm totally impatient. And I don't think you were very patient at IIT also. You're a pretty impatient guy. You never tolerated fools gladly. How could you become a teacher?
Well, you see, it started back in high school when my classmates didn't quite understand what the teacher was saying. They used to ask me to explain it. And when I explained, they said, "Gosh, you can explain it better than the teacher." The reason, of course, was that with my state of knowledge, I was closer to my classmates than the teacher was. And this way, perhaps I could better explain complicated issues. And so you see, from the very beginning, there was this aptitude built into my personality. But of course, you are right, teaching requires patience. And there's a cynical saying I came across in the United States. Those who can, do. Those who can't, teach.
Not true.
Those who can't even teach, do research. And talking about future and past, I recently came across an interesting aphorism. Past is history, future is mystery, the present is a present. So enjoy the present.
Wonderful.
Well,
Very nice indeed. Dr. Ghosh Roy, will you be able to share glimpses from your life, sir?
I would say about Somdev, he was my classmate. We studied together for 5 years, lived in RP Hall for 5 years, and full of memories of associations. Well, about well, he spoke about Professor Holker. He was a remarkable professor and a man, an idealist. When he left, as he said in 55, Professor Holker wrote a letter to us, charity, that my students, you should be as strong as a ship will be. And about Somdev, he was greatly fond of. Whatever project or task Somdev produced, we just see them once, read them once, and always conclude Somdev is a genius. Well, Somdev is an extraordinarily brilliant student and a person. And IIT gold medal, he just missed by a weaker to Ashok Sen, another Indian. And when Somdev left for Germany, I think India missed a brilliant scientist and researcher. I do not know how much Germany got out of him, but I think Germany should have got more from him because of the man I know. Germany should have got more out of him. But I would ask Somjo, I do not know very much about his work, the research work he did in Hamburg tank, and thereafter his teaching in Duisburg University. Is that correct? Would you say something in more details what you did, what is your kind of work you have done in Germany during your long career in Germany?
Yes, I'll be glad to outline initially and for a long time. My work was in the field of hydrodynamics. First of all, wave resistance of ships, wave making of ships, then hull propeller interaction, then maneuvering, collision avoidance, finally, questions of safety. How do you measure safety? How do you achieve safety? How safe is safe enough? These are almost philosophical questions. And this gave me great satisfaction. I mean, how safe should you build a ship? What's a rational answer to the level of safety which is satisfactory? It turns out that you can overdo safety. If you suppose you double the plate thickness of ships, so they would become unsinkable. But then you would need twice as much steel, and there would be accidents in steel mills, in coal mines, in iron mining. More people will be killed there. Fewer sailors' lives would be lost, but more miners' lives would be lost. And then if you increase the weight of the ship, the carrying capacity would be reduced. So you would need more ships. More ships would mean more accidents. More accidents would mean more loss of lives. So where is the optimum? Well, it turns out that the optimum is then achieved when we have the same rate of accidents in all fields of enterprise, where we don't improve the safety in one field of enterprise at the cost of other fields of enterprise. It's a very interesting result. And nowadays, the greatest problem of mankind is climate change. And believe it or not, ships are under heavy criticism, at least in Germany, because of their emissions, because of all the toxic gases and particles and smoke and pollution which ships are causing. So the most acute demand on naval architects and marine engineers today is to reduce the pollution caused by ships. There are various solutions that have been proposed. Of course, at the center of all these efforts is the search for another fuel. We must move away from fossil fuels. A promising fuel is hydrogen. One could produce hydrogen using regenerative energy like solar energy or wind energy, and use hydrogen as a fuel to drive ships, to drive land vehicles, perhaps even for airplanes. And you know, India is blessed with so much sunshine, especially my home province, Rajasthan. Why don't we use solar energy and wind energy in Rajasthan to produce hydrogen? That would be a major factor in solving the pollution problem. So my advice
Rajasthan is doing.
to young naval architects would be to drive in that direction.
So we need to move on now for time constraint. May I request Dr. Ghosh Roy, can you share some glimpses from your life, the challenges you faced, the businesses you had done from your life, sir?
Well, Naval Architects, novelty thy name. After my inter science, I did not try to sit for any entrance examination for engineering colleges or join anything. I had offered to study physics honors from St. Xavier's, from the principal of the St. Xavier's College. He wanted me. I said, wait on. I waited for IIT, and she saw the name Naval Architecture. I just went for it like some though I didn't know also what is Naval Architecture. But novelty of the name, novelty of the subject attracted me, and I fell for it. I, of course, in my preschool days, I traveled to Burma, to India by a ship. But other than that, I had no contract of the ship. But as Shebro said, there are Rawat and Sumdo, their Rajasthan, they might not have seen the ship. And that may be the case for almost all of the 11 students. We had 12 to start with. But we all joined. And once joined, we are mad about this subject. We are deadly loyal to the professor, Professor Holkar. Being a small batch, we are embarrassed quite often by the bigger teams, but we stuck on. You know, I remember we first went to Nehru Hall, and all door keys. When we went to lunch, somebody came and put wax to just harass this difficult team of naval architects. So this is the experience we had, but we survived. After we finished naval architecture, at that time is a long course of 5 years. Well, later on, we had 4 years. And Professor Holkar had a very own idea of how to teach how to train the naval architects. That is the one. After 2 weeks course, he sent us to shipyard first. Said, you boys who didn't see ship, you go to the shipyard first, see the ship. And then you come back, I will teach you. That is the experience what And after we finished more than other batches, we are fortunate. Each one of us had an offer for a job and arranged by the IIT. I joined along with Kochhar Rawat, Rajabagan Dockyard. At that time, it is a British company, IGNR. And we built port nozzles. Straight away, raw student, just joined. After we finished the port nozzles, we thought the company was taking advantage. We were trainees only. As per our schedule, we next job for the shop is the design office. We reported there. But the shipyard departments looked for us and pulled us back. They made us build two more port nozzles, Rawat and me, because of difficult architecture of the shape of the port nozzles and the forging that is needed, the development was needed. But with our basic education in IIT, we could think out and we solved all the problems. We made the steel mold, we trained the smithy people, and they along with that built this. This is Rajabagan. Then I went to Germany. Deutsche Werft, I worked at that time. It was a very prosperous, biggest shipyard in Germany, and I worked there in the shipbuilding. But after some years, after some months there, I thought it's a big shipyard, and India has not seen before, and it will be more useful. You can ship to a smaller shipyard. I joined the Zeta shipyard. And at the end of 15 months, of course, there is a period of learning German language in house listen. I came back and joined the Rajabagan Dockyard as a covenanted engineer. It's a very high salary, double, triple the salary of the assistant engineer or double the salary of the executive engineer. But I got my time, I thought it is a time to move over, and I came to Bombay. I had an opportunity there to find a teacher from IIT Kharagpur who chose me to study applied mechanics. And with his help, I enrolled in Bombay University. And after 3 years, one year of which was spent in UK, I got a PhD in mechanical engineering. And then surprisingly, I became the chief examiner and paper setter of applied mechanics of the Bombay University. On my research work, I published 2 papers in the Royal Institute of Naval Architects, RINA, in the transactions. One was based by the elastic theory, and the one was fracture strength criteria, theoretical basis. I was very happy to do this. And then at half the salary, of course, I had come to Bombay, but for my PhD. And after doing some years there, I joined the JRSC shipyard, getting an invitation for Admiral Kishan Dev and assistance from the principal officer, MMD Calcutta. And here is a challenge of 100 engineers and naval architects of 6 departments. I gained not much experience there. And one of the early tasks was designing 26,000 ton bulk carrier. Hindustan Shipyard, in the checkered career of 30, 40 years, never designed a ship from a first principle, from the lines. But we decided to take the task to design the ship and the task. There was oppositions from my colleagues. Kishandev was all supporting, but my colleagues reported to Germany that we young naval architects who had not designed such a big ship before cannot do it. Let us buy the design from Japan, lock, stock, barrel, from the ship form to production drawings. At that time, I was brave too. I went to Kharagpur and told them that to check my lines quickly. Very small order I placed. And they came back in 2 months, gave the recommendation. Taking the recommendations, I flew to Germany. I met my friend Shomdo there in Hamburg. Shomdo guided me to the director of the laboratory. I told him, I have no government permission to press an order, but I'm pressing an order on you. And I promise when I get the government permission, I will pay you. So no advance. Hamburg tank was readily agreeable, and in 4 months, they gave me completed the testing report and the recommendation of the lines. So my young naval architects then finalized the design, and my opponents could not deter us from proceeding. Ship was designed and built, 2 of them from the Mughal lines. And even after so many years, my gratefulness to Shomdo that he introduced me to the tank and helped me. This is, I could not forget. 2 of my achievements in Guardians was that 26,000 ball carrier. I'm very proud of it. Being the first time without foreign collaborations, the ship was designed and built with GRS engine. The GRS built engines in the Ranchi. The engine was also GRS. We advanced. And the second achievement, when I was there in 1980, Guardians, all the Guardians naval architects and myself, we organized an international seminar. Such a wide participation of the maritime fraternity from Bombay. Bombay is the headquarters of maritime activities in India, and Germany and all over. That was a great. People do talk of this seminar even today, 1980, first international shipbuilding seminar.
I was fortunate to attend that shipbuilding 1980 at Grand Hotel. I enjoyed that trip. I went from Mazagon Dock. So we are running short a little time, sir. We would now request, we have heard you and your achievements in the shipyard very well. If time permits, we'll come back to you again, sir. I wish to shift to Mr. Surinder Singh and request him to, talk about his life and having seen the world, actually, shipbuilding in Far East, Europe and India. If he can touch upon the nuances of shipbuilding, what he has seen, what you have seen, sir. It will be a great, great lesson for the naval architects.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Keeping up with the tradition, what you started, I would say that I was probably the first man who willingly joined naval architecture because my dream was to become a marine engineer and my mother won't let me do that. So I came to Kharagpur for an interview and they asked me which particular branch would you like to join? And I said naval architecture. And that time there were not many people wanting to do that. So I was immediately selected to join the naval architecture department. So I was very happy. Everything was good. And went through all the ragging for what goes on in Kharagpur. And after all this, I got selected in Roorkee for mechanical engineering. I refused flatly. I said, ragging once in a lifetime is enough. I'm not going to go through another one. So that was my beginning in IIT Kharagpur. And the other thing to remember very strongly is when we were in the final year doing our sessional works, we used to work at night and go to Hijli station to drink some tea, to feel some freshness till we worked till 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and we used to go back home, doing our lines plan, doing our general arrangements, doing our midship section, whatever it was for the ship we had decided to build, or to design, not to build. So that all came to an end, and then Dr. Raghuram had already left us, and he had joined Mazagon Dock, and he invited me to come and join Mazagon Dock. So as a valued professor and I used to admire his knowledge on aerodynamics and all the things. So I joined Mazagon Dock. In Mazagon Dock, I was initially a draftsman, like everybody else, and waiting for promotion and all that. And they put us finally in the basic design office. And I worked under Mr. Chopra at that time. And then after Mr. Chopra left, we had Mr. Dandekar. And then came the thing from SCI that they wanted to build a passenger ship in India. So I was involved in the design of the lines plan and the general arrangement. And then Mr. K.N.G. Menon came from SCI and asked us to explain what we have done. So that time I was asked to explain what has happened, and Mr. Menon was favorably impressed, and after a few days, I got a call whether I would like to join Shipping Corporation of India instead of continuing with shipbuilding, to join people to look after our new building program in Yugoslavia at that time. So Mr. K.N.G. Menon sort of invited me. So I talked to Dr. Raghuram, and he says, yes, no problem at all. You should join, and that will help Mazagon Dock and all other naval architects in the long run, if you make a success of your life in looking after new building ships for SCI to start with. And so that's how I started with Shipping Corporation of India. I went to Yugoslavia, and we were involved in building many ships in Yugoslavia, oboes, bulk carriers. And that's the first time I met Mr. Sundaram also. And after a few years of living in Yugoslavia, I met an Australian guy, Mr. Wakefield. He was working for Cargill at that time. And later on, when I was posted in Japan to supervise the 2 tankers we built, I got in touch with Mr. Wakefield again, and he asked me, why are you still with Shipping Corporation? You should leave. So I said, well, time has come to leave because we are too many in Shipping Corporation and not much chances of big promotions and things. So I joined Wakefield Marine in Yokohama. And the plan was to set up design organization, various things, and there was a slump in shipbuilding. Nothing was happening. So I was doing inspection of ships for loading cars, loading containers, and occasionally, if some owner had some problems on a ship, to go and inspect and suggest a solution for that problem. And one of the things which turned the whole thing around was that one ship always had cargo claims, and nobody could find out what was happening. So after inspection, it was found that the cross-panel cleats were never engaged by the crew. So with that, the owner, the people who insured the ship were very happy with the result, and that problem was solved. So in this way, then finally we got a new building contract in China. In this way, I met some people from Hong Kong who were influential in shipbuilding. And I was introduced to Mr. Banerjee. Mr. Banerjee was running the Orient Ship Management, and they were asked by Cargill to supervise their ships, which they were going to build in Korea. So I left Wakefield Marine and joined Orient Ship Management. And with Orient Ship Management, I first did the site supervision. And surprisingly, the most important thing, they selected me was to do painting supervision. And painting supervision is something which most naval architects consider well below their dignity to do painting inspections, cleaning inspections for painting. So sent me for training to Sigma Marine in Holland and came back and did my job. And I found out that that's the first time when anybody can see the structure clearly is when it's cleaned for painting. And you find out all kinds of structural problems which people who had seen the blocks, seen the construction had not found out. So that finding of mistakes and finding of blowholes or finding of undercuts and finding of all sorts of things impressed the Cargill, and the next ship, their hull supervisor went away and I was made the hull supervisor. And we found out various things wrong. And what I found was the best ally which anybody doing supervision is to have an open mind and open eyes. Because just looking minutely at things right from the beginning doesn't help. You can't find anything. So you have to step back, have a general look at the structure, and various things which are, with the latest designs, the structure was being optimized. So every section was made, instead of one thickness, they were made three thicknesses or four thicknesses, depending on the stress. And the welding sizes were different. Everything was different. But this nobody used to look at. So if the thing I learned was that, first of all, before doing any inspections on structure, you must study the drawings very carefully, find out what is not normal. Normal things nobody misses. Even it's only the unnormal things which are put in a very fine design which is optimized to the maximum to reduce the steel weight. That's where the problems come. Those little pieces of structure are missed out. They are not there. So that I learned by hard experience, practice. And later on, when I went to Hong Kong, I was employed by a ship management company. So I used to go and do ship inspections in service. The ships were 15 years old. And when you went on board, you're supposed to do inspections of course, general inspection on deck, inspection of the engine room, inspection of crew, inspection of everything, but also inspection of tanks to find out the condition. That's where I made the first big discovery, is that first of all, the tanks were full of corrosion, various damages, various things, and also tanks were full of mud, unpumpable mud. So that taught me two lessons. First of all, when you are looking at a design or actually build ship, you have to make sure that there is sufficient water drainage to the suction bell mouth so that the mud does not accumulate because of unpumpable water. So that was number one. And number two was the final inspection of a tank was very important, because in removing staging from tanks after construction, all the things fall down on the bottom and the paints gets damaged. If you don't do a final inspection, all those little damages go unrepaired. And very soon after sailing, after a year or so, a lot of things are rusted. A lot of damages are rusted, and crew have to spend a lot of time trying to correct it. So the final inspection of tanks is one of the most important things in new building inspections, to make sure that there are no paint damages, and if there are paint damages, they should be properly repaired. So these two basic things, from my point of view, are what most people should look at who are going to do new building supervision, is to make sure first that they study the drawings and find out not necessarily all the normal items, but unnormal items which are only put at a certain locations where high stresses are there. And second, to make sure that when the ship leaves, the ballast tanks are perfectly painted with not much damages. So I leave you with that. Anybody else who is interested in new building and what to do with it, you can always contact me personally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one question from me.
Yes.
Then we shall go down to a lot of questions in the question answer session and the chat box. We'll address them. The question from me is, having seen different shipyards, very briefly, what strikes you as a major part of success in the Far Eastern shipyards compared to Indian shipyards?
Major reason of success of the Far Eastern shipyards is, well, first of all, good design. Second is the workers following the design absolutely without any modification. They will follow it. They will not question why is this here, why is not there. And thirdly, that the workers are totally committed to their jobs. They have no excuses. They have to finish their jobs in time so that the ships can be delivered in time. So that is very important.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all the panelists. We'll now go to the question answer session. The questions put up by the audience. I think Mr. Chok's question we have already answered. Mr. Palit has got a few questions. Mr. KK Palit is also a very senior naval architect, very respected naval architect. He has said that I feel in India it is better to encourage small and medium-sized shipyards, say to Cochin shipyard size, rather than large ships as in Korea, China, and Japan. I also feel that in India we must set up a ship model-based testing tank for large and medium-sized commercial ships. So may I request this question to be answered by for the first part by Mr. Surinder Singh and the second part by Professor Sharma.
Well, that is a very, very large question actually, because I am not such an expert on Indian shipbuilding. I have worked for, of course, first 15 years in India. But shipbuilding in India, the biggest problem, of course, is resources. People don't have money to continue. Like ABG started a shipyard, and the shipyard owner just used the shipyard to collect money from ship owners and did something else. So there is no commitment to shipbuilding in India, except naval ships and naval shipyards. So it is not going to work.
Okay. Then the second part regarding setting up a large model basin, ship model basin. Professor Sharma, please. What are the issues which are involved, both in terms of technology as well as finance?
Here is Sharma speaking. Jyotishman, first of all, I would like to reiterate what Surinder Singh has just said. Professional pride and job commitment are absolutely essential prerequisites for success. And I think here we need more encouragement, more training in India, so that all workers at all levels would have a sense of professional pride and job commitment. Now, as regards the second question, which was aimed at me, Jyotishman, would you kindly repeat it once more? Because the voice communication is not perfect.
Yes, I shall repeat. The question Mr. Palit has asked is, I also feel that in India we must set up a ship model testing tank for large and medium-sized commercial ships.
Well, it's absolutely right. The preparation in the model basin is indispensable.
Even with sorry for the interruption, even with so advanced CFD, estimation.
I was just going to say that.
Yes, sir.
Despite the new facilities which we have through computer simulation, there is always a need of verification and validation through real physical tests. So while various activities have been now reduced to computer simulation, like we don't need 3 and 4 meter long drawings for fairing ship lines. That can be done on a computer screen. All kinds of calculations which we used to do by hand, by slide rules, by mechanical calculating machines, all that can be done by modern software. Yet, when it comes to hydrodynamics, when it comes to safety, when it comes to maneuvering, when it comes to seakeeping, you still need a physical validation through model tests before you can 100% rely on computer simulation. So there's absolutely further need for model basins, also in India.
Okay, I shall thank you very much, sir. I shall club two questions, one from Captain Javed Mehboob and one from Mr. Shashank RV. The question from Javed Mehboob is, a large number of naval constructors take premature retirement and transit to civil sector. Can you provide guidance? This question is to Captain Mohan Ram. And also, Mr. Shashank RV, what is your vision for naval architecture in India? So if you can reply to these two, sir.
Javed, you know, 2-3 things I can say right away. If you want to make the switch, the sooner you make the switch is better. If you work too long in one profession, shifting is more difficult. Number 2, people do part-time MBAs thinking that that will improve their job prospects. They don't. There are MBAs, dime a dozen in industry, who have worked with the company themselves. The part-time MBA might increase your performance on the job. It won't get you the job. Number 3, you have to equip yourself with certain skills which are fungible, which can be adopted by private industry. For instance, somebody who's done work on heavy shipbuilding can go to heavy offshore industry. Somebody who's worked on software can go to software. A pilot in the Navy can become a pilot in the commercial ships. Many electrical engineers made the shift. That way, I think naval architects are a little luckier. People who worked on air conditioning have moved to air conditioning. People have moved to windmills. So this is some kind of adjacency should be there. The last and most important thing is preparation of CVs for application. Don't write Ramayans. Don't write 10 pages. Make it brief. Look at the guy whom you're applying to. Write what is interesting to him. Don't write OLQs, I commanded 10,000 people, I did this, I did that. That's all service stuff. Nobody cares a damn. They want to see if you can fit in their company. So you have to write your CV very carefully. The last and most important thing, when you take up a job, for God's sake, don't undersell yourself. Don't join at too low a level that you'll get stuck. I mean, I have always bid for high stakes. When I left Mukund, I was vice president of the largest organization. TVS was after me for 2 years. I said nothing less than president. And I didn't know a damn thing about two-wheelers. I just took a damn risk. But if you take risks, you succeed. And I can tell you, naval architecture is one of the widest fields. You worked in shipbuilding and naval architecture, you can do anything under the goddamn sun. It all requires is hard work and confidence. Thank you.
Okay, I think that also answers the question from Shashank Kadvi. What is your vision for naval architecture in India?
Who's going to answer? Not me. I'm not a naval architect anymore. I'm a two-wheeler man.
Okay, may I request Mr. Kochhar to reply to that, sir? Mr. Kochhar.
Just repeat the question again.
Yeah. What is your vision for naval architecture in India?
My vision for naval architecture. As you all know, there's hardly any shipbuilding. Where does a naval architect today look for employment? Most of them go to the shipyards. And unfortunately, the shipbuilding industry is not in a very good shape. So I think they go for, I get calls from so many naval architects, from so many institutes. I think they're producing, I believe, 500 to 600 naval architects every year in India. And for them to get a job is very, very difficult. I know there are a lot of consulting companies who are taking up naval architects. Shipping companies is not much scope. The situation today is, as per my knowledge, is not very satisfactory.
Okay. I would think that it is a little better today with the Vision 2030 document and initiative coming in and Atmanirbhar Bharat. But I go with whatever you're saying, sir. There is also a link.
Which shipyard is employing naval architects today, except for the defense shipyards? Which other shipyard is employing naval architects? Hardly any. And look at the number of naval architects being produced in Cochin University, IIT Kharagpur, IIT Chennai, and there are another 4 or 5 institutes. And my information, I believe there were 500 to 600 naval architects, and probably 75% of those, they go for something different, for IT or something else.
So can we then come to the question raised by Mr. Anthony Prince? Mr. Anthony Prince runs a design institute based out of Kochi and out of Canada. His question is, we all agree a good design is the foundation on which a ship is built. However, this fact is not recognized and respected in India by stakeholders who are also qualified naval architects and marine engineers. How can INA change this image of naval architecture and marine engineers in India? This is a question posed to INA. So I would request you to advise us how we can do it. Mr. Kocher, sir.
No, I don't think I agree with him, because if any good design, my understanding is that the designs, most of, I'm not talking naval ships, I'm talking commercial ships, which whether you take Amazon dock, of course, none of them are building any commercial ships now, but other small shipyards like Bharati, ABG, most of the designs are being done by Indians in Singapore. And I think there's hardly any they're getting any design for foreign companies. Foreign companies means run by Indians. So, and unless you have a proper design, no, I have done some ships, supervision with very poor designs, again done by Indians. Gets you into a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties. Your steel weight goes up by 50%. I don't want to mention who did this. The steel weight went up by 50%. So a good design is very necessary, and we have the capability in India. And whether it's in India or a lot of people are in Dubai or in Singapore, they're operating from there. I fully agree with him that we need a good design.
Mr. Surinder Singh, would you like to comment on this, sir?
No, I have nothing to say about Indian designs and Indian shipbuilding. I have no idea.
Okay. Dr. Ghosh Roy, would you like to comment on the question posed by Mr. Anthony Prince? What advice would you give Indian naval architects? How we can improve the image?
To clarify a little more, what is the first question? Yes. Can you speak out?
Question. The question is, we all agree a good design is the foundation on which a ship is built. However, it is not recognized and respected in India by stakeholders who are also qualified naval architects and marine engineers. How can INA change this image?
This is the first part of it. The answer is there. That a good design is always foundation or basis of the product. In any product, the design is the fundamental thing. So if any product for value creation, in the same is a shape, whether the shape is well designed, whether it is high displacement, lower deadweight, and anyway, the design is the basis of it. But I would add a little on that Mr. Palit's one on Indian shipbuilding, that for India is a peculiar country. We are technologically quite advanced in some fields, and in manufacturing and construction, we are lagging behind. But we have to keep in mind that the country is producing 100 million tons of steel. This is a unique thing. Next to China, India is building 100 million tons of steel. So it is natural we expect that shipbuilding, which has moved the economy of the other countries, should also come to India in a big way to help the economic growth. From this point of view, macro point of view, not small and big, shipbuilding must come to India in a big way. So whether it is small ships or large ships, it will, of course, will depend on demand. But there also, if we can improve the productivity, export is a channel we can use, like Vietnam is doing, Philippines is doing, exporting ships. So if we have to look, we cannot, for all time to come, be a country without exporting exportability. It is coming. So we have to have a vision, national vision to plan these things. Not individual likes and dislikes should not matter so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. The last question is from Mr. Devashish Datta Debu to Mr. Kochhar. Yes. He is asked, in your long and distinguished career as a naval architect, what has been the most difficult decision you have had to take professionally? This is from Mr. Devashish Datta.
I got to think about it. Am I still connected or no?
Yes, you are.
Huh?
You are connected, yes.
I am connected because I couldn't see anything. I think the most difficult decision was when I left Mazagon Dock and joined ABS. And because the chairman of Mazagon Dock wouldn't let me go. I was assigned to be the manager for the 3rd Brigade. And Admiral Sampson, he brainwashed me for 2-3 hours. And I I decided then not to go. But then the next day, they accepted my resignation and they told my uh, the boss of ABS who was to take me, not to take me. So I think that was the most difficult period of my life. I don't know whether I should call it decision or not. That was a very difficult decision for me to leave Mazakonda and go to ABS against the wishes of Mazakonda. So other than that, I think I've been very fortunate professionally, and till today, I think I've been so lucky that I never applied for a job. Every time a job has been offered to me, and whether it was in Mazakonda to do stability calculations or ABS because they were looking for a naval architect. They had the first new building, a dredger for Bombay Port Trust, and I spent 35 years with ABS. I didn't believe in changing many jobs. So 9 years in Mazakonda, 35 years in ABS. So I think very stable kind of career I had. So very satisfying. That's all I can say.
Okay. Thank you very much, all the panelists. I'm sorry we could not have Mr. Sundaram amongst us today. It would have been wonderful to have him. I hope he will have watched it or will be watching the YouTube video later on. With this, I would request my colleague, Commander Capt, to say the vote of thanks.
Thank you, JD. And I'm just trying to start my video so that I'm visible. And I think the last 2 hours have been one of the most enjoying hours I had in recent times, since the time the lockdown started and people started having various webinars. And I would like to start by saying that the one thing which has come out very clearly in today's session is that like in any other profession, the true professionals never retire. Naval architects in particular never retire. I have just now shared a photograph of Mr. Chopra. This photograph is from our last December's technical session where Mr. Chopra was a chief guest. So I hope the photograph is visible. So
yes, it is.
What we have seen is the professionals don't retire. However, some of the professionals stay in the same profession and some of the professionals change the profession. So we have seen both kind of examples today, and it is really a very inspiring session for everybody. And this also gives me an idea that while we are looking at the professionals who stayed in the profession of naval architecture and the professionals who migrated from naval architecture to other professions and excelled there. So there is also a case where the professionals from other professions adopted naval architecture, became naval architects, and did something marvelous there. So maybe we will have a session soon for that. I am one of them. I am a metallurgical naval architect, as I call myself. So with the fantastic life stories shared by Dr. Ghosh Roy, Mr. SD Sharma, Captain Mohan Ram, Mr. Kocher, and Mr. Surinder Singh, it's my great privilege to thank all my elders, all my seniors for the time which they have spent, the energy which they have invested for this session, and we are really, really grateful to them. We have a very large audience who has made this program a success, and on behalf of the organizing committee, I take this opportunity to thank all the audience, and I want to assure two things to the audience, that the regularity of our sessions will continue. We will let you know about our next session very soon, as well as the recording of this session will be available for those who have missed it and they can see it again. The session has been possible with the coordinated effort of all the chapter coordinators from our Indian chapters as well as the chapters abroad. And chapters abroad is a new chapter in the history of Institution of Naval Architects. And on behalf of this executive committee, I would like to say that we would see to it that this body called Institution of Naval Architects becomes an institution during the tenure of this executive committee. The core executive committee headed by Jyotishman Das Gupta and all members who have made it a success, like Akshay Jain, Amir, who has been running this show in this entire video conference, Ramesh, Kamoro Sujir Bakshi, Partho Barman Royda, and all the chapter coordinators. So on behalf of the executive committee and on my own behalf, I thank everybody for that. With this, we would like to wind up this session, and we would say that thanks a lot for your time, and we will very soon come out with the next session, and we are also coming out with some more activities like richer website. Presently our website is not so rich. Maybe a journal very soon. The journal had stopped a couple of years back, so that journal should be back on track. So there are many more exciting things for the professionals of naval architecture. Thank you so much. Have a safe day. Take care of your health and take care of all your near and dear ones. And have a nice day. Thanks a lot.
Mr. JD,
JD, your mic is muted.
Sorry. Thank you very much, sir. We are indeed honored to all 6 of you who could take time and effort to be with us, amongst us, and inspire us. I'm sure the professional generation who's very active, and the younger generation will draw a lot of inspiration from you. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you once again.